Welcome into Daily Delivery. My name is Noah Furtado. I'm filling in today for Michael Rand. It's a Friday, and we have quite a bit to talk about. Jerry Zgoda will be joining us on the show here in just a little bit. You'll get to hear from him on anything from the Loons coverage that he's been up to, as well as some of the golf. He'll be covering the 3M Open this next week. And that's all going on while the Loons have a couple of Leagues Cup matches that I will be on site for while he's doing that. So we'll be able to chop it up later on in the show. But to open things up, if you don't remember it, I was on with Michael maybe 2-3 weeks ago just to introduce myself. I'm an intern here at the Star Tribune, just the Arizona State kid you may have heard about. I was doing a lot of links, a lot of Loons, and even some Aurora stuff at the time. And in the recent week, I should say, I've had the time to really look into this piece on Maddie Darling. It's not published yet. It'll go up sometime this weekend. Keep an eye out for it. But it was a really involved story on Maddie, given what she has been able to do after her time at Edina High School wrapped up in 2022. If you don't know or you aren't aware, Maddie was perhaps the best soccer player in the state of Minnesota for multiple years. She was the Star Tribune's Female Athlete of the Year, and from then, she's only added to the accolades on her resume. She went to North Carolina, perhaps, I shouldn't even say perhaps in that case, that North Carolina, one of the most historically successful women's soccer programs ever. 20 plus national championships since, I would say, the 1980s. And Anson Dorrance, one of the best coaches, legendary coach in that particular space. He coached Maddie as a freshman this past year. She picked up 5 or so starts throughout the year while playing in every game. And that was, really good experiences for Maddie to really, get her feet wet as she goes into really a career that has, a high ceiling, limitless, if you will. Earlier this summer, she competed with the under-20 national team at the CONCACAF Championships in the Dominican Republic. And she had done that. She had made the roster, 21 players, after being a late add to an under-18, under-19 camp before then. That was her first ever experience with the national team in any respect. And the only reason she was in that position in the first place was because Damon Nahas, a North Carolina assistant coach, called and recommended her to the U20 coach, Tracy Kevins. And that's all it took. She kind of fell under the radar in terms of, as she went through her high school years, she was dominant if you were following women's soccer in Minnesota, but the attention obviously didn't reach to that level until recently. And really, that is part of the story. That is part of Maddie's story and what she's been able to do in terms of bringing exposure, positive exposure back to the state. Because not long after she was named to the under-20 roster, a teammate of hers from Edina, Izzy Angle, she's going to be a senior this next year, got an invite to the under-17 camp that was going to take place in North Carolina around the same time that she was going to be in the Dominican Republic. And I'm not telling you this to say that was a direct cause as to why Izzy Angle got a look, because Maddie was doing as well as she was, But I talked to their coach, Katie Offit, the Edina High School women's soccer coach, and she was pretty confident that Maddie had something to do with it in terms of, just again, her storied sort of success outside of the state reflecting back well to the state and those who are coming up behind her. And really, there's been some good soccer players, women's soccer players that have come out of Minnesota. It's not to tell Maddie's story is not to deny that at all. Brianna Scurry, obviously that's a big one. She was the last Minnesotan to compete for the U.S. women's national team. And she retired in 2008. And Maddie Darlene, well, she's well on her way toward that. It's probably the closest, the best chance this state has to getting a U.S. women's national team member in a very long while. All right. And, for this story, I didn't just talk to Maddie. I didn't just talk to Katie. I talked to probably 8 or 9 people who all sort of contributed to this idea that the further Maddie goes in her career, the better it is for Minnesota women's soccer amid what was characterized by some at least, as this next wave, this new wave of players coming from the state, coming from that pipeline that can really make an impact on the soccer scene outside of Minnesota. And Maddie in particular was vocal about players she watched growing up who didn't get the same sort of exposure or enough of the spotlight that she felt they probably should have. Teammates of hers on her club team, Minnesota Thunder Academy. Caitlin McBean was one of them. She's now at Penn State, was on the All Big Ten freshman team. You had others like Sophia Bowman. She brought up, she's at University of Minnesota. She's been there for 3 seasons now. All Big Ten second team twice. Made the All Big Ten freshman team as well. But neither of those two, and many others who could be considered good players out of Minnesota, didn't get any national team exposure. National team, national camps. And as you can tell, the point is that within a couple of weeks, you had Engel get the U17 invite. You had Maddie make the U20 team after she was evaluated in her first ever camp at 18 years old. And then, to top it all off, Maddie goes to the Dominican Republic and leads that team to a runner-up finish. But in her first start, she didn't play the first game. The second game, she got her start, she got her opportunity, and she scored a hat trick. So when you have a player like that who's just ready to take advantage of the opportunities that come to them, who can really be a pioneer for a particular sport, there's a story to be told there. And in this case, I was able to tell it. And you can read that here in the next day or so when that goes live on our site. You can find it in the Sunday paper if you're feeling up for it. And that's that. That's how I've been spending a lot of my time. And now, after this short ad break from MGM, we'll return to talk to Jerry Zgoda. Hear what he's been up to. Again, lots of loons. And then coming up, some golf as well. We'll be right back.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, pre-mixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to mgmwineandspirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Now we'll welcome in Jerry Zgoda. Jerry, I just wanted to first, before we get into Loons, 3M Open, golf stuff, I know you got a lot going on. How's your trip to Sweden? I know you spent some time up there. It's just, I've never been, so I'm curious.
It was great. I'd never been there. It was never really on my list of things to do, but it's a beautiful city, and it's kind of a weird place where you go to bed and at 2:20 the birds start chirping because at 3 a.m. It starts to get light because it's so far north. So in the summertime, but it's just a beautiful city. Architecture is great. It's kind of on the water with all these hundreds of islands and the kind of the barrier islands. I took a cruise out 8 hours out and back, my last full day there, and reminded me a little bit of northern Minnesota meets Puget Sound in Washington. But yeah, it was great. I went for the final two Elton John concert tour on his farewell tour, and just so happened because of all the COVID and all the scheduling that ended up being Stockholm. But it was certainly worth the trip. Lots of people, even including a couple from Minnesota, had the same idea as me, and we all went. So it was fun.
Oh, really? Okay. How long were you there for?
6 days.
6 days.
Day to get acclimated, a couple days to actually kind of see the city, and 2 nights we played 2 shows on a Friday and Saturday night. So, and I just lucked out. I had a ticket for Saturday night show, and just before I went in, it was on the side. It was a fine ticket. I walked up to the box office and said, "Have you dropped any good singles?" And they lifted up a ticket and said, "Best seat in the house, front row, right in front of the piano." So it was a great way to say goodbye.
Oh, certainly. I'm not huge Elton John fan, but different generation for sure.
You're too young, but there were lots of all ages. There were kids from 8 to people 85 probably. So he crosses all the demographics.
I'll believe it. Well, since you've been back, the Loons, obviously they've had some pickups since the new transfer window has been opened. Recently, Ethan Bristow, a new defender, has been added to the roster. In your story, you mentioned Heath said he'll not be available for about a month here, maybe until after this Leagues Cup break. Was that sort of expected? Is it just a matter of incorporating him into the team?
I guess in an emergency he'd be available. I just think they don't want to throw him into this right now. Just give him a month here to kind of get acclimated in practice. They've got time to do that, and then when the MLS season resumes, August 20th, when we get back going here, then move him in. There's a chance. Things always change. There's a chance that could change, and you could see him before then. But I think Adrian just wants to kind of get him in and get him acclimated and get his conditioning up, and then bring him the last couple of months there of the season.
How much is he really needed at that left center back position? Really, I mean, you have Kamar Lawrence, Eric Valentine, Devin Paddleford. It seems like there's a lot of depth personnel at that position. As you see it, what does his addition sort of mean? Is it just sort of a backup to the backups, or how does that play out?
Well, he's a guy that they can put with Paddleford and have guys for the future, the next 2-3 years. This is a move for July or August. It's made for next year and the year after. I think it's with the club options. I think it goes to 2026. So with him and Padelford, they I think that's what that move was made for. You can move Zarek over if you need to. You can move DJ Taylor over. Kamar Lawrence is back. So it got a lot of attention, but I'm not sure how much you're going to see him or how much of a payoff there's going to be this year on it.
Mm-hmm. There's obviously a lot of other offensive signings, Temu Pukki, Ishmael Tuzuri-Shradi, and then they obviously brought up Emmanuel Iwe. Those are sort of offensive bolstered signings. How does that now play into this next month-long break when they go into these Leagues Cup matches? How does Heath approach it from, what he's told you in recent weeks in terms of, playing those players or maybe getting some others involved? I recognize the roster released for the Leagues Cup had around 4 Minnesota United FC 2 players on it. How does that look?
Well, I think it gives them time to play Pookie and Ray more. I think you'll see that. The interesting thing is the other day, Adrian was asked about it and gave every indication that this isn't going to be a situation like the U.S. Open Cup, where they're going to bring guys up. They may bring guys up from the twos, but they're not going to bring them up and put them in the roster, 2 or 3 guys, and really change the roster to give other guys a chance who haven't been playing much. I think that he's going to go. I think he's going to take this first Leagues Cup seriously and go with his best players, and then see what's next after that. After they get through that game, and with Chicago coming up, because if you don't advance out of the 2 teams out of your 3-team group, it's a long way to the next MLS game. You got about 3. You're gonna have 3 weeks sitting here waiting. So he wants to win those games in advance and take it seriously and give it a chance to I'll just call him Izzy, to figure out what role he plays, to see how Ray and Pookie do and how much they can kind of grow that chemistry. So I think that's what those games are going to be. It'll be interesting. It's a kind of a foreign concept not for soccer fans, but for American sports fans. Although the NBA is doing a version of that, I guess, next year with a tournament within the season. But this hitting Mexico versus the MLS is it's the first time for committing this amount of time. We'll see how it goes over.
Mm-hmm. What's your early temperature check on Temu Pukki? Obviously, it's really in the early stages, but in terms of his fit, you had written a story about Tuzuri-Shradi, certainly, that he had really come on with contributions in his first couple of matches. But for Pukki, right, the big signing, how does that? Is it something that fans can still have the same excitement about? As he sort of solidifies himself within the team.
Well, he had other chances, but the big thing was that one chance he had on that run that Ray fed him the perfect. Mm-hmm. He had the opportunity, he scored, and that's something this team hasn't had. I mean, Bongi's showing signs that maybe he can become that guy, but they're strikers. They get their chances and they don't finish that final ball, and you could tell just the poise that he had and on the run where he put it. The guy knows how to score goals. So he's had other chances that didn't come about, but that one you could just say, yeah, that guy's a goal scorer. We'll see, how that plays out long term. He's 33, but give him and Ray some time, and let's see what they can do together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In addition to Loons, there's some golf coming up. You had a story come out on the Herons family, rich tradition there. 3 young Herons were at the State Am. How fulfilling was it for you to tell that story, given what Carson and Tim had done, on PGA level and all of that, to really see the next generation come through?
Yeah, someone sent me a note and said, there's 3 Herons or 3 brothers in the State Am, and it just was kind of an interesting. We don't cover that stuff a lot. We'll do it in the briefly section, but we don't send reporters out like we did in the old days just because of staffing and all that stuff. But when a good story comes along, I think Patrick's working on the guy Caleb. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, from Blaine, who won the State Open by 9 strokes and won the State Am by 12 strokes. So when a good story like that comes along, and we'll see if we'll see him maybe in the Monday qualifying for the 3M. Just so dominant. When a good story like that comes along, that's a good thing to tell. On the golf beat, I did a story maybe what 3-4 weeks ago on Interlochen, completely redoing their course. Um, uh, in the hopes of, I think, somewhere down the line of maybe getting more big events. They've got the 2030 U.S. Women's Open coming, but kind of restoring it to the way Donald Ross left it 100 years ago. So there's good golf stories out there. We try to get to them when we can.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the 3M upcoming this next week. What's the lowdown on that? You said maybe someone from the state am could potentially qualify for that. No?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see if Caleb's going to be in that. If to qualify, there's a couple. I don't know if there's anyone left, or if Monday is the last one left out of Victory Links. But the other thing to kind of watch on here is I'm watching the British Open right now and watching a guy like Justin Thomas not headed for making the cut again for like at least the third time this year in a major, and he's outside the top 70 FedEx Cup points. He's outside that. There's 2 more tournaments left after the British, this and the 3M and the Wyndham. It'll be interesting to see him, if he and anybody else, like maybe Shane Lowry, who's right now outside the top 70, decide to play in the 3M just to try to get their points up. Before this year it was 120 was the cutoff line. Now they made it 70 and 50, so that those points became at the end of the year become even more valuable. So we'll see if you see JT show up here. I think they announced the field. You have to put in this deadline to register by late Friday afternoon. Now guys can always drop out after that, but we'll see what the field looks like and see if anybody sort of unexpected drops in here at the end because they need the points to get into the playoffs.
Right, with playoffs coming up, the sleepers, I feel like, especially in golf, they're always there. No, I mean, you mentioned Justin Thomas. There's the big names that maybe don't, like you say, make the cut, or they're just not on their game in any given stretch. For you, headed into this next week, are there others who you would expect, or is it mostly sort of solidified in your head about who's going to be competing?
Well, it'll be. I think the field is probably pretty set. The one good thing they've got going for them in this summer, with all the disturbance with the live golf and all that stuff, and these designated tournaments that have drawn better fields, it's made it a little even harder for tournaments like the 3M to get a field. You're still, one thing they got going is they've got a star defending champ coming back in Tony Finau, a guy that people know and hasn't won a major yet, but has won, I think, 3 times since he won here. He won the next week in Detroit, and then he won in the fall, in November, and then he won again in April, I think, in Mexico. So he's a guy who's, after so many second place finishes, is starting to win a little. And now he comes back here. He likes Minnesota. He's got relatives who live here, and then you've got 6. I won't name all of them, but you got 6 major champs in the field, guys like Hideki Matsuyama, little older time back, guys like Stuart Sink, who won the British Open. So you got guys with names and pedigrees, and then we'll see if there's any other surprises. But if they can get a star defending champ back, and then I had guys like they had, I think, Gary Woodland and Billy Horschel, some names of guys in Woodland's case, a U.S. Open champ. I think that might be enough. They're trying to make this like a party. They're building stuff on the fairway to make it more like the Waste Management Open in Phoenix, make it loud and make it fun to come to. And we'll see. I think they're in their 4th or 5th year of a 7-year deal. We'll see what the future brings in terms of trying to get a date that's not the week after the British, which makes it hard to attract the field. If they can get maybe something earlier when school's letting out in June. I don't think they want to be, their first year they were on the 4th of July weekend. I don't think they want to be there, but we'll see what the next couple of years bring for possibly a change of date.
Yeah, so there's a higher ceiling, is what you're saying, to what this event can mean. A week removed, there's fatigue, right? You mentioned not being able to track certain players to this particular event. I mean, that's incentive enough, is it not, to really try and seriously consider a drastic change?
Well, I know they're trying, but it'll be interesting to see when the schedule comes out for next year of what they do. You know, in response to the Live Golf, they added these designated tournaments, which are the more ones that have been around longer. They really boosted the purses to get that, and that kind of made it even tougher for tournaments like the 3M. We'll see where they end up. I doubt that they'll get a designated tournament just because of the amount of money somebody's going to have, whether it's sponsor 3M or somebody's going to have to put up to get something like that. So I think they're probably stuck. They're set at least for the next year where they're at. But I think the schedule's coming out not too long in time. Maybe within the next month, it'll be intriguing to see what the schedule looks like, and because right now there's not a lot of answers for just what this quote unquote merger means between the two entities.
All righty. Appreciate it, Jerry. You have a good one. And hopefully we can have you back on soon.
Okay. Anytime.
That's going to do it here for this edition of the Daily Delivery. My name is Noah Furtado. You can reach me at noah.furtado@startribune.com. I'm also on Twitter, _ first name, last name, Noah Furtado. Thank you, folks. So nice to take care of this podcast episode while Michael takes a well-deserved day off, and he'll be back soon enough for the next Daily Delivery. Have a good one.